been quite a time, or a long time, I should say, and it's awesome to see you here. This little stream, I'm just gonna jam a little bit, and hopefully I'll be able to speak to you guys, and hopefully also show you one or two tricks that can help you along the way as you're exploring the guitar. So in there, I threw in some arpeggios, and I absolutely love doing a bit of arpeggios when playing the blues, simply because it kind of takes you away from that super classic blues tone, and instead it gives you a bit of a modern touch. So you might recognize, standard pentatonics. Sounds like that, right? Now if I add an arpeggio in there, gives it a bit more of a modern vibe, and I love doing that. And you can take it as far as you want to. You can, throw in some outside keys and stuff like that. If you want to go fusion, I don't always feel the need to go there. I usually just go for simple melodies is what I love doing. So anything that helps me create a melody, whether it be a lick or a scale or anything, is good for me. So if you're wondering what I'm doing right now, I'm just playing in the standard pentatonic box here on the 9th fret. And I like that because you can always, play the low E string and you're gonna get that E major pentatonic sound. So just hit that open E string and then play your trusty pentatonic box. And it can get fancy. You can use all your blues licks, and it's gonna get that kind of major it sounds kind of nice, and it if you're used to hearing the minor pentatonic sound, it might also be like a fresh sound to you. By the way, how's the weather where you are? Right here in Stockholm, Sweden, we thought we were going to get spring, but instead winter came back. So we have a decent amount of light. As you might know, sometimes here in the northern hemisphere, it gets pretty dark during winter, right? But that's not the case anymore in March. It's a bit more, we get some sunlight, but temperatures are cold right now. So good day to sit inside and jam. By the way, I'm not sure I'm seeing... Oh, we have Alex in the chat. That's awesome. Did I miss your comment? No, you probably commented right away here. Winter is back. Awesome to see you here, Alex, by the way. Yeah, I'm really longing for spring. It might not always be the best times for guitar, but Alex, I know you're into the acoustic guitar, so I can't think of any better spring activity than go out there in the sun and bring your guitar with you and play that thing. So that's also something I like doing. Try to kind of visualize some voicings within whatever scale you're playing. So if you're in the scale of E major, as is the case right now, if you can just find a way to play a couple of notes simultaneously, you don't need to know their names, right? You don't have to know that it's a E major suspended 9th, whatever. You could just whoops, as long as the notes are in the scale, which they weren't there, but now, and it sounds good usually. You can, it's usually easier to do it this way, instead of, going by the book and, looking up the chord names. Just try to find your notes within the scale you're in and see if it sounds good. And if it does, you can try mixing one of those chords with a couple of lead notes. And that sounds really cool, especially if you... And, you know, the more you start mixing those two, the more interesting it gets, at least to my ears. You know, I think the times are gone when we sort of separated between lead and rhythm playing. Nowadays, I think some of the most interesting playing comes from people who can actually combine both rhythm and lead. And that's especially true when, you know, you're sitting on your own and playing, and you might not even have, you know, a backing track, whatever. You just want it to sound good on your own. Whenever you do that, I think you're doing yourself a favor if you add some chordal harmonies in there. So again, hit that low E note, see if you can find some notes in the scale that, you know, which are easy enough to finger, and don't care whether it's a chord or not that you know of. Doesn't matter. Just any combination within the scale is good. Again, I'm using the scale of E major here. It could be any scale, but E major is good because I can use that open E string. And then see if you can... And when you have that combination of lead and rhythm, I think that's when you can really find some sweet notes. Because let's face it, those lead notes really don't have any value if you don't also hear some backing harmony. So on their own, they're kind of boring, right? If you just play... It's kind of boring, but when you add some harmony, gets interesting, and the more advanced the harmony, you know, the more interesting it can get. So again, if you know a scale box or you know a scale or whatever, basically a couple of dots on the fretboard, maybe check if you can make a chord out of it. And if it happens to be in the key of E or A, then you also have that huge advantage of being able to play one of those low bass notes. And that's really helpful when you're trying to get some harmony going for the first time. Okay, let me just see if I have the right settings to see your comments. By the way, is sound and video and everything working? I haven't done these in a while, so it's always nice to know that you guys can actually see and hear me. Lou, video and sound is fine. Awesome, Lou. Good to see you here, by the way. By the way, if you guys have any requests or anything you are currently struggling with, Lomac, what's up, my man? And you know, something you maybe think I can give you a helping hand or whatever, I'm here for you. So do let me know. I know you know, we have a lot of different people. Some people are working on their... And there will always be some people are working on their... But I try to cater for all of that. So if you have any, you know, thoughts, questions, whatever, I'm here for you. Currently, I'm not really working that much on my own, you know, shredding and stuff like that. As always, I'm always working, or I have like an improvisation in mind. So I really don't like practicing you know, pre-written stuff. I like trying to come up on the fly, simply. So you know, it's going to be improvisation based, but I don't really work that much on that kind of thing. Maybe I should. It's been a while. It's fun as well, but it's more of a, like I was speaking about, more of a like a chordal thing, trying to, you know, kind of gray out the difference between my soloing and my rhythm work, and that's hard because I'm a lousy rhythm guitarist. I've always been lousy at chords and rhythm, so it's a lot of work for me, but it's also a lot of fun because that's kind of the only thing I'm hearing in my head right now. And it's really no fun practicing stuff that you don't want to hear in your head. Patrick, what's up, my man? Sorry, I don't understand you, but you play very well. You're an amazing musician. Thank you so much, Lomac. What language do you speak? Maybe I know a few words of it. Est-ce que vous parlez français? Hablas español? No, I should give up. Enoch, what's up, my man? How you doing? TC, hi. I'm enjoying your excellent lesson and playing. Awesome, TC. Sorry about that. Okay, so basically, I mean, we haven't really... Oh, there we have a question. Carnival blues. No, not sure what that is. But what is alterno? That's a good question. What is alternate picking? Oh, from Russia. Budje lubizny pozvanite papoje. That's all I know. Okay, so what is alternate picking? And how to play over chord changes, cool. So alternate picking is an interesting technique. Some people associate it again with, you know, whatever. So basically playing super fast and whatnot. And it can definitely be used for that purpose, because when we're alternate picking, we're playing down and then up. So every other pick strike is in the opposite direction. And that basically allows us to utilize the momentum. Once we pick down, we really don't want to go around and then down again. We're going to lose time and effort and energy and maybe even money. Just kidding. But it's not an efficient way to do it, right? We much rather have that downstroke and then immediately do an upstroke. That's what it's about. So nothing fancy there. But it can either be used to, as I said, build speed, or it can be used to create really nice sounding phrases. Some people skip alternate picking and they just play like this. Downstrokes, which is not a bad thing. However, it is not efficient, right? It sounds pretty damn good. So what can we learn from this? Well, there are good ways of picking without using alternate picking. So in other words, getting a lot of like action and motion is good for tone, right? This sounds good. Sounds bluesy and nice. And it actually, to my ears, sounds a little bit better than that small motion, right? So what I recommend you consider when working on alternate picking is to actually practice alternate picking with a big movement as well. In other words, if you play like a big movement downstroke and then a big upstroke, that is also alternate picking, and it can sound really cool. Okay, so very different from that kind of alternate picking. So two different worlds, but both of them use down, up, down, up, down. So that's just a little introduction for alternate picking, but it still emphasizes what I consider to be, you know, one of the major things there. You know, we guitarists are often so concerned about motion efficiency. We really want to be able to play fast and have the best technique. And then we tend to forget that the fastest technique is not always the best sounding technique. And if I had to choose, I'd much rather learn a cool sounding technique than a super fast technique. Of course, the best of both worlds would be the optimal solution, right? And the starting point is to realize that, you know, motion or how big of a movements you do actually affect tone. So you don't always want to be the fastest cat around. Sometimes you want to be the one who sounds the best. Cool, so see a lot of questions coming in there. You happen to know any fast buckethead licks? I don't. I've never studied buckethead, but I think he's of the Paul Gilbert school, right? Actually, my shops are really crappy for that stuff now. So just a simple 3 or 4 chord songs. You just play one scale. Okay, so maybe I'll start with that. Play over chord changes. And TC is basically saying, you know, how can I go about like a simple chord progression that has just like 3 or 4 chords? It all depends what those chords are. In most cases, in pop and rock music, you know, your 3 or 4 chords are going to be in the same key. And that makes things really easy, right? Because if we have like a typical C meets A minor, meets F, meets G, that kind of thing, we're going to be in the key of C major or A minor. They are the same notes. So if that's the case, you don't really have to think about the chord changes. You can just play that A minor pentatonic scale. And it's actually a lot of times going to sound better than if you try to think of, oh, what's that chord and what do I need to play? So that's my number 1 tip. You actually, a lot of times a melody will sound more natural if you just stick to one scale and try to come up with a melody instead of trying to target the right notes all the time. But there are times when you want to be more conscious about the chords that are happening. Perhaps you've exhausted your will to just jam around and find melodies in the pentatonic scale, and you want to get more in control. Then you can start learning the arpeggios of those 4 chords. So the C chord has an arpeggio that goes with it, right? And so same thing with the A minor, and same thing with the F, and same thing with G. And if I play those arpeggios, you might be able to hear the chord progression in the background. So starting with C, A minor, and then F, and then G, back to A minor, or was it C? Sorry. Anyhow, so those are like the 2 extreme. Either you play like one single scale, it could be the pentatonic scale or the minor or major scale, or you stick to those arpeggios that are the exact same notes as the chords being played. And then again, it's actually a whole spectrum, so you might want to find a balance between those 2, which is pretty much the exact same lesson to be learned from what I said about alternate picking. So there's a whole spectrum there, and there's no right or wrong. Actually, there is, and that's whatever works for you. That's the right thing to do. That's going to change, you know. The more you learn, the more you understand, the more you progress, and the more your needs might grow, but not necessarily towards more theory. Maybe you find it more useful to, you know, just work on melodies in your head, to listen to a lot of music and combine stuff and go on for a long walk and see if you can develop a melody in your head. Or maybe you want to sit and study books, or, you know, to shamelessly plug GMC, you could study our theory courses on the GMC site. You know, but it's all going to depend on your musical personality and what you need. I am not super inclined to, you know, dive into theory. Sometimes I do, but many more times I just get inspiration from life or whatever. So that's why I prefer not to strictly follow chord progressions. However, there's another scenario where you might want to follow chord progressions, even though it's just like a 4-chord thing. And that is if those chords are not belonging to the same key. Then you do not have a choice. You have to follow those chords. Sometimes you can find like a more unusual scale that fits those 4 chords. Or pretty much always you can do it that way, but that's not a guarantee for it to sound good. So unless you really are confronted with a chord progression that is comprised of standard pop chords and progressions, unless you get that kind of chord progression, then a lot of times you're pretty much bound to follow the chords. So, for example, so that's, a lot of changes happening there. I went from A minor to A, and then G minor, and then to E7. That's an example of chords that don't belong to the same key. And I could get really jazzy and fusion, or I could try to, it's not really my thing, but suffice, is that a word, to say, I just stick to I would start by sticking to those arpeggios. And then the more comfortable I get, I try to find outside note, and it becomes more of a scalar thing where I understand and see that there are some notes that almost always work. And those can be played kind of regardless of what the chord is. That would be my approach, depending on, again, what that 4-chord progression is. So thanks for that question, TC. We need those questions going. That's the only way we can take the stream forward. Otherwise, we stall. But we wouldn't want to do that. So thanks again for shooting your questions out to me. They need to hit me here. Not fun. So Patrick is asking, do you still use the Kemper profiler? I do, yeah. Right now I don't. In this specific sound uses, it's the full tone OCD. Maybe I should take you for a pedal tour. Can I do that without messing everything up? Let's see. So my studio is a mess right now, but I'm still going to show you my pedal board. So there it is. So what I'm using now is actually I go into the EQ here, just a little boost, get some low mids there and some high end. Then I go into, let me see, I actually think I go into the OCD. And that's pretty much where the amp sound comes from. This is the OCD you're hearing. And then a bit of, actually this is a compressor, but as you can see, it's not set to compress at all. It's I just use it as a booster, basically. I don't use this compressor for this sound. I have very slight reverb. It's like a lush, kind of cloudy reverb, but it's mixed very low, so you can barely hear it. There's the mix knob. And then here's what you get for the cab simulation. Otherwise, it sounds a little bit harsh without this. So this is just a digital thing that gives you cab sound. So my Kemper is here. I don't use it now. I must confess that I'm a bit more into analog right now, but the Kemper is still extremely useful, but I get more inspiration from analog stuff. So I'm just going to turn this around, because when I hold the phone I can't show you the on and off, so I can't really A and B the sounds. But since I've showed you the pedals now, I could just show you what it sounds like. For example, if I disable that EQ, it sounds like this. So no EQ, with EQ. And I actually use it to boost as well. So when I turned it off and said no EQ, the signal not only didn't have any EQ, but it didn't have any boost, or not as much boost. So basically, yeah, here's with it, without it. So this is actually pretty good. Pretty good, cool sound, but for lead, I'd rather have a little boost there. Now, if I turn off the compressor, which I said that I use it as a boost, you can also hear the difference here. Or actually, I can't hear any difference at all, which is a bit surprising. So I just dialed in this quickly. So it could be that the signal is already so boosted with the EQ, so it doesn't do much of a difference. Gives me a little boost. Anyhow, that's it. If I turn off the full tone OCD, there's no distortion happening. So you know, cool for that kind of thing. But you know, if you want a bit more of a bite and a bit more stuff happening when you're playing single note lines, single night loans are very good with the distortion pedal. No, but yeah, so a bit of gain helps when you play single light loans. I'm not even going to attempt to say that. I'm only hearing your guitar without an amp. Oh, sorry, are you? Turn it off then. Turn it up then. Do you hear like a... I mean, without... So if I just turn off the amp, this is what it sounds like. Was this what you were hearing? Man, I really need to get better at this. So this, no amp, right? And then if I turn up the volume, here you can hear all those pedals in action. Thank you, Marty, for pointing it out, so I don't sit here for hours making a fool out of myself. Cool, so there's a question. Tips for effective rhythm playing. Yeah. Let me think. It struck me that I have 10 more minutes, then I need to get my little girl from school. But effective rhythm playing, I seem to use the same UDU. Oh, okay, up, down, strumming pattern. I think the most interesting rhythm patterns and stuff like that actually come from, again, mixing rhythm and some kind of lead. So it doesn't have to be like a straight soul or anything like that, but rather where you have some kind of movements. Let me think what that would be. So maybe instead of like... So that's like kind of pretty basic, right? Where I would do... Nothing wrong with that, but if you want more stuff happening, you could... So if you have your first chord, maybe check if you can move your fingers around and still make it sound okay. Cool, Patrick. So a bit of the amp was audible. That's good. So whenever I want to, get more interesting rhythm guitar, I would probably look at, including some single note embellishments or whatever you want to call it. Something that gives a bit of action to that chord. Of course, you can just look at the right hand and explore rhythms and stuff like that, and maybe get funky, whatever. That's also nice, but since I'm playing on my own, that kind of stuff is cool, but it's it's more of a band thing, I would say, or at least I get bored if I just sit and do funk stuff on my own, you know. I'd rather have a lot of things happening so I can pretend that I'm not here on my own and I'm actually, you know, getting I'm sounding a bit more like a band, right? So that's what I'm striving for. Oh, reggae rhythm. I don't know about that. Maybe some backbeat stuff. I suck at reggae, I have to confess, but I love playing over reggae backing tracks. But yeah, if you want to play on the upbeat, right? So if you have, you can if you visualize your strumming as down, up, down, up, down, up, and you don't actually play the down part, you only play the up part, then you get that backbeat thing, which is used in reggae. But I can't give you more specific reggae advice than that. Any tips for palm muting? Palm muting? Well, my advice would be to start doing it if you don't. There's a whole range of palm muting you can do that is different from your that kind of heavy metal, you know. You can definitely do you can do palm muting for, you can do very light palm muting, so you let much of the note through, and that becomes another tool in your arsenal that you can use just to create variation without having to learn a bunch of new licks, right? You can apply it to something you already know and get a slight variation. And a lot of times that is going to be key in order to develop your repertoire, because you don't have, you know, 3 lifetimes where you can sit and learn new licks. You need to make use of the licks that you already know to come up with more variations. So try that. Try moving around palm muting. Sometimes palm muting can be used with like high gain stuff. You can really do, I don't know, some Rick Graham something. You can use it to, you know, clean up your playing quite a bit. So sometimes what you can do is you can mute a little bit too much when you're working on your lead, and then you can work on backing that palm muting up so you get just that right balance. And sometimes you can just palm mute everything and that's gonna sound okay, especially on high gain sound settings. So it's definitely a tool you need to be using, because the palm is there and it's perfectly positioned to be applied, so there's really no reason to not use it. No reason to not use it. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. It's a bit like, you know, letting your little finger just hang around. That kind of sucks, right? It's there. It could help you. So there's no, or just let it hang there without using it. That's a bad idea, because it could help you. So why just use one finger like that when you can use... So it's the same thing with the palm. You really want to be using it, and don't just leave it hanging there. Do you ever play a tonal or whole scale type of sound, sort of like Primus? I do, yeah. Especially when I'm jamming over a backing track and I want to get like a fusion-esque type of sound. You know, like I could try to maybe give you a quick tip here. Oops, I'm just trying to figure out this YouTube interface. So, you know, if you're playing yours, like, again, standard pentatonic licks, they're my favorites. So if you have your standard pentatonic scale, what you can do is to see every one of those notes that are not contained in the scale, basically in between the allowed notes. You can see them as an opportunity to play chromatics. So that means instead of, like, you know, playing the allowed notes, you would have those notes in between, right? Which sound really bad on their own, but if you use them chromatically as passing notes, they can give you that nice flavor. So you could do, I don't know if you can spot a difference, but if I just play the allowed pentatonic notes, like that, it's nice. Sounds like pentatonics, but if I do, it sounds a bit more, I don't know, cinematic. It sounds more 3-dimensional. and you can take it as far as you want to. You can take it all the way to a tonal land, which was your question there, right? You can do. So if you do, especially if you start landing on those outside notes, then you're really going to sound atonal, right? This still sounds pretty bluesy because I land on the pentatonic notes. But if I land on one of those outside notes, then yeah. But I don't do that very often. How to play alternate picking. Wow, that's a popular topic. I should probably do like a stream just on that. Actually, I have extensive information here if you rewind the stream when we're done, and where I speak a lot about alternate picking. It's a huge topic, and actually I find myself today guiding one of my mentor students. Mentorees is the word. One of my mentorees, and you can find that thread on the GMC forum. Basically, you know, how to start approaching alternate picking. You need to, if you want to be in control, you have to think like a robot and basically practice those movements like a robot. As humans, we're inclined to be a bit lazy, right? So if we play slowly, we don't have to be super efficient. We think, oh, it's okay, that's nice. We play like that. And then we realize, oh, it would be nice if I could play faster. And then it turns out that those big movements, they were not super helpful for playing fast, right? And all of a sudden, we wish we had practiced those efficient movements at a slow tempo, because that would have given us control over them. And those are the movements that you can use for higher tempos, right? So that kind of thing, you can't really learn that if you spend your time doing like that. Although that sounds pretty cool, it's not helpful for developing speed. So yeah, that's like in essence what you need to understand for developing fast picking. But I'd say there are so many schools of thinking and there's so many different ways of doing it. You might want to start with maybe your favorite guitarist and see how they do it, just to give you a starting point. If you want to know how I do it, here comes a shameless plug, but I have an alternate picking course on it. And the reason is my focus has always been improvising and flexibility and tone. So I try to strike a balance between that, but I've never been into, you know, just the speed thing. So if you want to learn that, then check out my alternate picking course at GMC. Sorry, plug is over. Cool, lots of great questions there. Man, I must say I'm really happy to see you guys, you know, interacting with me. This really makes me want to do more of these. So thanks so much for commenting here. I just think these sessions they become something special when there is that interaction going. Because let's face it, a live stream is just like a crappy video, right? Where you can do live interactions. It sucks on everything except the live interactions. Because when I don't live stream, I obviously can get a better sound and video and I can set things up. But now I can actually speak to you guys. So that's awesome. You know, I'm an old dude discovering the internet, basically. So let's see what you guys are saying here. I heard him, are you walking or running? You use different techniques for walking or running. Yeah, that's true. You don't always want to use a running technique to walk, but if you should learn a running technique. Yeah, I think that's a good words of wisdom there from Patrick. It's a good way to visualize it. Basically, two different things, right? As Patrick said, you sort of, when you're learning, you have to realize that those are two different things. You can actually see it as two different techniques. And I like to see it as, you know, have the big movement, alternate picking, that sounds really cool. And you can take it to a certain speed, but after that, it's impossible. But it's still actually my preferred way of doing it. Big movement, sounds good, sounds bluesy, sounds rock and roll. And then you have that intense, shreddy alternate picking, which is something else, which can sound really good, I think, if you use it as a build-up. It's also often overdone, so you have a lot of people just doing it for the sake of playing fast, which, yeah, is was not my favorite type of sound. But I've done it as well. I'm guilty, I confess, I confess. And I also should emphasize that having done all those years of, very shred-oriented practicing, it's still something I use from time to time. So it's not useless. And I'm pretty confident that it has helped me build a technique, even, for more musical stuff. So it's not a bad thing, but it's not something I do nowadays. Trying to defend myself, though no one accused me. I don't know why. Just happens so. Cool, TC. Very glad you like the stream. Warms my heart. Let's see. Oh, it's my heart. It's beating. Faster and faster. I think I'm gonna have a stroke. No, just kidding. YouTube's, they send out these tips and they say, oh, think about being both instructional and entertaining. So that's what I tried to be. This is all YouTube's fault. If I'm behaving like a jerk, it's because YouTube told me to. No, but it's an interesting piece of advice, and you can really see that how people go to great lengths trying to be both funny and instructional at the same time, which is, of course, a good thing. Just, you need a balance. It's just as with alternate picking. If you just go in for the speed, it's just too much. But if you have that nice balance between speed and tone, then, that's really desirable. And I guess the same goes for teaching. What do I know? What do you know? It's like Puscifer. Does anybody listen to that band? It's, the singer of Tool. I really like them. And yeah, they have that song. What do you know? Very nice song. I do use a wah. Very rarely I use like a Vox wah. No, it's not a Vox. It's a Crybaby. Jim Dunlop. I did use a Vox and I didn't like it as much. I prefer the Crybaby, which has a bit more articulated wah, so you can actually have a wah, wah. Whereas I think that I had a Vox and it was more like wah. So to answer your question, I prefer wah pedals that do wah, wah. I don't like the ones that do wah. So if you can find a wah pedal that does wah, wah, I like it. If you just find one that does wah, I won't like it. That's the easy answer. Why sometimes stuck my picking? Tell your opinion. Detecting, picking, up or down, picking like alternate picking. Yeah, well, that's the hard thing with picking. If you just try to play fast, or if you don't think that much about it or practice it, you're gonna encounter situations where like, oh, what's wrong? This feels impossible. And it's usually always when you cross the string with and you've done like a downstroke, and then you cross the string and you do an upstroke. So basically, when the string crossing goes in the opposite direction of the picking direction. So again, if you like play an upstroke and then you need to go all the way around and play a downstroke or something like that, then it's going to be difficult. So what you have to do is you have to find those problematic areas and you have to isolate them and only practice the parts where you mess up. And that's when you're going to start to realize the things like Troy Grady is speaking about with downward and upward pick slanting, or whether you want to use economy picking, or whether you want to do it my way. I call it pigato, where I combine picking and legato. There are lots of solutions for those problems, but trust me, everyone encounters them. I prefer the pigato approach because it's more prone to improvising. Whereas if you do it like the Troy Grady, where you actually mix downward and upward pick slanting, that works. That's the Paul Gilbert method. But it's not good for improvising at all. Or I haven't found it to be that useful for that, at least. Cool. So I'm gonna stop this stream now, but I think this was awesome. This made me want to do many more streams. So thanks so much for checking in. Since we have like 3 active social media channels and I'm supposed to be on them all, that means I'm not quite as often here on YouTube. And it's simply because the algorithm doesn't treat us as nicely. So I go where the algorithm is kind. So if you want to see more of me here on YouTube, then of course comment, like, and do all that stuff. So maybe the algorithm starts liking us again. But if you don't want to do that, you can instead come to us on Facebook and Instagram. And especially on the GMC website, obviously, where you can get more detailed teaching from me. But yeah, so I'm going to do these more often, but I'm not always here on YouTube, so be sure to check us out on the other channels as well. And again, TC and everyone else, Patrick, and everyone who asked these awesome questions, thanks so much. That's what keeps the stream going, so I hope to see you soon again. See ya. Cheers.